that is like just so difficult to see until we see it, and then it's so obvious, which is probably describes a lot of things. But is this idea that things cannot be different than they are. In this moment, this is what is, and and for us to experience that they should be different, that requires imagination. That requires thought to create some alternate reality, some other way that things should be. And for us to believe that imagination, that imaginary story, and then we're kind of in this place of it's still just thinking, we're still just believing it. Life is still whatever it is, but attention is in this story that says this could have happened instead, or this should be happening instead. This should not be. What this is right now here is wrong. There's some alternative that's feasible or possible. And I mean, isn't it one of those things that's like, when you hear it like that, like, of course, we live in that so much, whether it's about now, whether it's about the past, this thing could have turned out differently than it turned out. Like, how could it have turned out differently than it turned out? Really, how could it? How could right this minute, this moment, this right here, whatever this is, and that's a whole other thing I'm going to touch on in a second, but how could this experience, whatever it is for you, what is here right now, actually be different than what it is? It only can in imagination. It only can when we make up a story of something else, which is made up, which is imagination, and then we pretend like that is real or could be real. I think this is so massive to really, really see. All of seeking has to be rooted in this, right? If things cannot be other than they actually are, if we really see it can only be exactly as it is, and it only ever could have been exactly as it was. And moving forward, which is more imagination, but we'll just go there. We think about the future. It's only going to be whatever it's going to be. Think about all the seeking that comes up to try to counteract this. The seeking that is there to make this other than it is. It's all rooted in there is some other way. This is not enough. This is not good enough. This is not final enough. This is not complete enough. This is not whole enough. I am not enough. I can be different. I could be different. He could be different. She could be different. All seeking is rooted in that belief that things could be different. And it has to be a belief. It's a belief based on our imagination conjuring up something that's not real and telling us that's a possibility for right here, right now. So it's like this is the root of all of this seeking. Also, what this feels like it's really rooted in is thinking we know what is. Like for us to say, and I'm not suggesting we're consciously doing all this, but really look at this for a second. For us to conclude on some level that this is not enough, we're assuming that we know what this is. We're putting a stake in the ground, which we aren't doing. The mind is doing that all the time, but we're in that, we're believing that as if it's true. So it's like the mind is saying, here's who and what you are, here's who and what he is. You should be otherwise, he should be otherwise, this moment should be otherwise. It's imagination creating alternate realities, but it's also imagination creating this reality. It's like us thinking that we know what is. So when we think we know what this moment is, there's no way we know what how do we know what this moment is? I mean, on the one hand, it is all there is, and our experience is all we have. So we know that on some level we are in this experience, but you can notice the mind coming in with these labels and judgments and statements and stakes in the ground about what is, and that is thought. That is not what is, that's thought. So it's like we get to fully be in this mystery of what this moment is, who I am, who he is, who you are, not knowing any of that. And when we don't know any of that, it doesn't make any sense that the mind would go create an imaginary something else. This is all kind of rooted again around thinking we know what's what. And think about the implications of this, to really sit with this, that the past, let's say, could not have been any different than it was. Nothing in the past as you think about it right now, because there really is no past. There's only your memories of it in this moment. But even in your memories of it in this moment, you remember events, you remember things that happened. Along with those memories might come a story and some thoughts that this should have been different, this could have gone differently. That's thought right now. That's imagination right now, wrapping it around more thought right now, which we call a memory. So to really sit with this and see that nothing could have been, actually could have been different than it was. How could it have been? How could it have been? How could this right here, right now, truly be anything other than exactly what it is without jumping into a created story about it? It couldn't be. And the implications of that are gigantic. If the past could not have been anything other than exactly what it was, what's all the guilt about? What's all the regret about? What's all the shame about? What's all the replaying of events to try to reconcile them or see them differently? What's that about? If things just always are and were and will be exactly what they are, period, but for imagination telling us otherwise, but not really but for. Imagination tells us otherwise, but it just is what it is. What's all the regret, guilt, shame, overthinking, replaying of events about, and looking the other way, which is also imagination, projecting what might happen? I mean, look at the way we scramble and try to plan and protect and put certain things into the future to make things go our way. If they could, much of that is rooted again in thinking, I don't want this to happen again, so I'm going to do this later. It's all imagination. So sit with that. These imaginary worlds where there are alternate realities that have not played out are so pervasive, and they feel so absolutely real. We're so identified with them. They have logic to them at times, even when we can see there's no logic. Even when we see through that there is no logic, they have a feel to them. Like, it just feels like it could have been different. It feels like I can do something about making it different later. It's such a vivid, human, amazing, alive experience. But really look at that. How could things have been different? And as that settles, so much starts to lighten up.